Hello everyone, this is Nick, and welcome back to Axis and Allies 1942 Online. Now we're going to be looking at a strategy that I would probably say is one of the strongest Allied strategies to use against Germany. This is a kill Germany first type of strategy. It entails the US pretty much leaving Japan alone and just really kind of providing a sort of slightly defensive front in the Pacific, but pretty much focusing all of their forces on Germany. Now, this is a strategy that has to be combined. Both the UK and the US need to partake in this strategy. If not, it's very, very tough for it to work. Here we already see that Russia and Germany have moved. We're actually at the start of the UK turn. And what I would actually suggest that you do here is follow just the basic kind of, Japan counter. Just get 3 tanks in India, bank the rest of the IPCs. You're going to hold on to those 13 IPCs. You're not going to do anything with them because the whole point of the strategy is that by the beginning of round 3, that's right, we're going to be banking IPCs for 2 entire rounds. By the beginning of round 3, you managed to get a very nice little defensive fleet here, a couple of extra transports, a couple of extra infantry and artillery on actually mainland England for the initiation of your assault in round 4. The US itself actually has an opportunity to attack France or northwestern Europe on round 3 itself, so you can kind of do a 1-2 punch, although Germany does go between the US and the UK's next turn, so you'll probably see a counterattack which facilitates England taking France or northwestern Europe on round 4, which is pretty nice for England because they're kind of low on the IPCs, but let's go ahead and get started with the actual strategy. Again, we're just going to purchase 3 tanks. We're going to put them on India at the end of the turn. And I mean, here you can do a couple of standard things. If you've got the Spitfire on England. If England has the Spitfire on Egypt, you can try to take out Sea Zone 37 with the reinforcing fleets from Sea Zone 39 and from 35, the ones under India. If you've watched my What the Hell Happened in the Pacific video, you'll know what I'm talking about. I'm going to completely ignore that. This isn't part of the strategy, so I'm not going to be going through all the motions of every single thing. I'm pretty much just going to be ignoring moves from England and possibly even Japan as well. England in the Indian Ocean and Pacific theater. I mean, I'm not just going to completely ignore all of England's moves, but we're just going to go blow through the strategy. So we're just going to purchase those 3 tanks and ignore all of this for pretty much the rest of this video. Now, this is also a really good strategy to begin to think about if the Atlantic looks like this. If the US still has the 2 transports and 1 destroyer because Germany either didn't attack it or sent a submarine or 2 and the destroyer defeated them. Very rare if Germany sends 2 submarines, but with the Larry Harris GenCon version, you'll usually see Germany try to focus a little bit more on the British fleet up here in Sea Zone 7 because they're out 1 additional submarine. So you'll usually tend to maybe see something like this, where Germany has the remains of a fleet up here, a couple of fighters maybe on France, that they either used to attack this fleet or they brought over from somewhere else. You might see something very similar to this, where Germany prioritized the British fleet up here in the North Sea. So if the board does look like this, you'll know that this is a pretty damn good strategy to take into account. Specifically for the US. The US needs to have these 2 transports and this destroyer here. If they don't, the IPCs aren't really going to match up. It's going to be a little bit more difficult to execute, so it might take an additional turn. It might take some IPC tweaks here and there with a couple of infantry. You might have to attack with less transports per turn for a while until you can build up your forces. But if the board looks like this video is for you. So, as England, you want to ensure that you take out this remaining German fleet. I would suggest probably sending a Spitfire over here, and I would probably say take the bomber as well. If they're going to have 2 submarines, even if they have a cruiser and 1 submarine, I'd say take the bomber up just in case. You might want to do an IPC bombardment, an IPC bombing of Berlin itself, but personally I'd like to absolutely ensure that Germany is wiped off the face of the Atlantic Ocean. We're not going to be doing anything with this transport, That's pretty much all the combat we're going to be doing in the Atlantic. Again, we're just going to ignore all of this, so we'll end the phase and go into the combat. You can do whatever you want down here. Do whatever your heart entails, but we're not going to be focusing on that. We're just focusing on what I like to call the invasion of Normandy strategy. So, with this being the only combat we do, let's go ahead and destroy this German fleet. Sadly, they took out... Oh! Both the ships. Wow. That's actually pretty rough. That's actually a pretty rough start. Yeah, I was hoping to be left with the 2 Spitfires. Sadly, we only have 1. That is unfortunate, and that might ripple down through the next couple of turns, but it shouldn't be that big of an issue, especially with the backing of the US force by round 3 and 4. So, non-combat move, we're just going to move the infantry from Western Canada onto Eastern Canada, and I mean, again, I'm just going to ignore this. But, you know, if you're playing UK, remember that you have an infantry on the Union of South Africa, not actually South Africa. Okay, so you have an infantry on the Union of South Africa. Try to remember that. If you see this lone destroyer here in Sea Zone 17 because Germany did some landing with a battleship bombardment up here in, what was this, the Black Sea? Yeah, the Black Sea. Sea Zone 16 is the Black Sea. You know, maybe you want to risk moving it over, but again, maybe you're just giving them an incentive to bring their battleship out here. So you do whatever you want with that destroyer if it still exists. Go ahead and end the phase and place your 3 tanks on India, because it's good to use against Japan. And remember, we're just banking all the other IPCs. Alright, so here we are at the start of the US turn. I actually made a couple of combat moves for Japan just so you might see what the board could potentially look like if you're up against a relatively decent Japanese player, or Axis player I guess you could say. Now here, miraculously, Japan was not able to take Sichuan. They did wipe out the force on there, but they were left with no ground troops, so they weren't actually able to take it, which is actually good for your second round purchases. If Japan manages to take Sichuan, then your round 2 purchases, not round 1 clearly, because you're always going to start with the exact same amount of IPCs every game on round 1, but your round 2 purchases, instead of an artillery, you're going to have to purchase an infantry, and you will see that in round 2. But I just did this really, I didn't do any UK stuff down here, but I'm just going to leave Japan kind of looking like this, just so you see what I'm talking about. You know, if they did manage to take Sichuan, it's going to affect your round 2 purchases, but if it looks like this, you're fine. Anyway, what we're basically going to want to do is purchase 2 transports to have 4 in total, with these 2 that we already have on the eastern seaboard. We're going to want to purchase an aircraft carrier and 2 artillery. And then we're going to have 6 IPCs, and we're just going to bank those the way the UK did with their 13 from round 1. So remember, just 2 transports, 2 artillery, 1 aircraft carrier. The aircraft carrier is really just going to provide a little bit of Atlantic defense from the German Luftwaffe and the potential, you know, putting a couple of submarines here in the Baltic Sea? This is the Baltic Sea, right? I mean, if these are the Baltic states, I think that's called the Baltic Sea. Anyway, combat move itself, we're really not going to do anything. There is a variation of the strategy where you take these 2 transports and the existing land units on the eastern United States and you go help the UK with northern Africa a little bit. But with 2 fighters in France, that's risky. I mean, 1 destroyer defending against 2 fighters in France, you're just going to lose a lot of navy. Replaceable, but it's really just going to set you back almost an entire turn. So just keep the stuff there for this strategy again. So combat move, we're doing absolutely nothing. We're just going to prepare for the invasion of Normandy. Combat move, we're going to want to move a whole bunch of fleet, a couple of ships from the Pacific, start getting them heading over east. We're going to move this cruiser up. We are going to move this destroyer over here and this transport over here. Everything else we're going to have sort of as a little buffer navy. You can kind of place them wherever you want. I personally, if the Pacific kind of looks like this, if Japan is going transport heavy and kind of focusing down here trying to take India, I like to take what's remaining of my fleet and placing them right next to Alaska, like so. So you're going to have an aircraft carrier with fighters as a defense, you're going to have a battleship and one destroyer as a defense, a submarine as well, not very good for defense, but just in case, and they're going to act just sort of like as a little buffer, so Japan doesn't get any cheeky ideas of saying, maybe I'll take Alaska, because if Japan does take Alaska and start ferrying a couple of troops through here, the US having to purchase troops to put on the western United States to counter that in turn 1, 2, or 3 is really going to mess up the strategy that we're going for. So you're just going to keep a little reserve navy up here next to Alaska, just so that Japan doesn't get any cheeky little ideas. And if they want to attack you with the fleet they have, remember, fighters defend on 4, fighters attack on 3, so you will statistically have a pretty good chance of beating anything that they send at you in the next couple of turns. And remember, since we did purchase an aircraft carrier, you're going to take the 2 fighters that are actually on the United States land and send them into the water. You can't do that, remember, if you purchased an aircraft carrier and put it down in your actual mobilization phase. We are also going to move all land units east. Every single one of them. We're going to leave the western United States completely vacant, where you can leave the AA gun there, that's fine, and we can leave that infantry on Alaska, that's fine as well, but we're going to move everything from the central United States and western United States, start getting it over to the east. So that's looking pretty perfect for this strategy. We're just going to go ahead and end, mobilize the 2 transports and aircraft carrier into these waters, and the 2 artillery as well. Alright, here we are at the start of UK round 2. We can go ahead and keep doing the 3-tank strategy in India and banking the rest of the IPCs. But I feel honestly, if you're going for a kill Germany first strategy, you might want to maybe change it to like infantry or artillery. For the purposes of this video, where I'm just focusing on the invasion of Normandy, I'm just going to put 3 infantry there to act as sort of a defensive buffer. There are things that you can do here. You know, I'm not really going to go into a UK overall strategy. I do have a little video on how the UK can counter Japan trying to take India in a rush, but again, I'm just going to, for the purposes of this video, bank even more IPCs than I did last turn. So I'm just going to purchase 3 infantry and I'm going to put them on India. In regards to actual combat itself, if you're the type of person that likes to risk your bomber for an IPC bombing, go for it. That's what you would do in this situation. Again, I am going to ignore the complete rest of every other theater and just focus on what's going on here in the Atlantic. If Germany decided to put any ships here, you know, maybe you want to take your bomber and your 1 or 2 remaining Spitfires if you have them, and attack the fleet. You know, do whatever you want. Really, we're just not going to focus too much on actual combat. We're just focusing on what we're doing with the IPC banking. So hopefully this factory does not shoot our bomber down. It did not, and we scored a 5. Very, very good start. Very good start for the preparation of the invasion of Normandy. Now again, non-combat move, we're not going to do anything. We are going to start doing things at the end of round 3 as the UK. So just move your bomber and Spitfire, if you used it for anything, back to England. There is a different variation where you don't necessarily need the Spitfires, and if you actually want to use them for the Indian theater or anything like that, you can move it down to Gibraltar and then over to Egypt and etc, etc. Again, I am completely ignoring that, you know, or if you want to help Russia kind of shore up its defenses, you can do that as well. But again, just completely ignoring the rest of the board. So move your bomber back if you used it, and place whatever you decided to purchase. Hopefully nothing too expensive. Don't go crazy for fighters or anything like that, because again, we need the banked IPCs for round 3. So place whatever you purchased on India and end your turn. Alright, beginning of United States, round 2. This is where what I said previously comes into play, where you are going to want to purchase 3 transports to complete another set of 4. With this one we have coming from the western side, or the Pacific basically. So 3 transports. We're going to want I believe it was, let's see, 2, 3, 5, yeah, 3 infantry and 4 artillery. See how that IPC goes straight to 0? That's because the United States kept Sichuan at the end of round 1. Japan was not able to take it. Like I said previously, if Japan does somehow miraculously take out the 2 infantry or 3 infantry if Russia sends one over, and US fighter, and they actually take Sichuan, you're going to have 1 less IPC, in which case instead of 4 artillery, you're going to purchase 4 infantry and 3 artillery. Sadly, yes, very sadly, 1 transport for your second turn of invading Normandy is going to be transporting. 1 transport is going to have 2 infantry instead of 1 infantry and 1 artillery. But in this case, we managed to actually hold on to Sichuan, or better said, Japan was not able to take it in round 1, so we have that 1 extra additional IPC, and we are able to purchase our 4th artillery. So that's what we're going to want to do. We're going to want to get 3 transports, 3 infantry, 4 artillery, and the phase. And again, combat, really, if you want to do a bombing on Germany, great, because that's what the whole strategy is. We're trying to weaken Germany to the point where we can just invade it and take it over in a couple of turns. If you want to do anything here, if you see that Japan has maybe placed like a lone aircraft carrier and destroyer, maybe you want to attack it, and in the hopes that, they're kind of scared to counterattack and retaliate. But in all honesty, I really just prefer to have that defensive buffer, just really deter Japan from getting any ideas. So again, if you just want to do a bombing run, great. Hopefully Germany does not shoot down the US bomber, and we can get a little bit more of an IPC. 2, not bad. I mean, anything other than the bomber being shot down is good, is a win in my book. Bomber back to England, and now the non-combat, just make very, very sure, don't just be looking up here and be like, oh, that's it. Make sure to bring this transport up and this destroyer as well. And we're going to want to move the 4 existing transports up here to the coast off eastern Canada, the 3 infantry from eastern United States, 1 infantry from central United States that we moved over from the west, these 3 artillery, and 1 tank. Now all of a sudden you notice that we have 4 incoming infantry and 4 incoming support units in forms of artillery and a tank to complete the 4 transports that we are going to ship over next turn. And right behind that, we are now going to have 1 transport coming up through the Panama Canal, and we are going to, we can move the rest of this fleet up as well, because they're going to go assist and provide a little bit of a defensive front at the end of turn 3. But yeah, that's looking like pretty much it. Yes. So, with the 3 transports we purchased, we now have 4 transports behind this little invasion fleet, and a set of 3 infantry, 4 artillery, and 1 more infantry from central United States, which in the non-combat turn of round 3, we're going to move up to eastern Canada, effectively creating a cycle where every single turn, we're just going to purchase 8 land units, place them on the eastern United States, and cycle 4 transports back and forth from sea zones 10 and 8 over and over and over, and just keep ferrying 8 land units per turn into France. The UK is going to do the same, and we'll see that shortly. Just want to make sure nothing else needs to be moved. No, it's looking pretty damn good. Alright, beginning of UK round 3, this is where we are actually going to use all the IPCs we have banked. Again, try to purchase whatever you want for India, just to kind of keep pumping either defensive or slightly offensive units in there. Again, for the purposes of this video, I'm going to absolutely maximize the IPCs that we can use in the Atlantic, so I'm just going to purchase 3 infantry. Again, try to find variations of this strategy where you find different purchases for what you want in India or what you might try to achieve, but in reality the focus isn't so much defending India as it is trying to knock Germany out as quickly as humanly possible. but you don't want to just completely sacrifice India by not putting anything there. That would be pretty stupid to let Japan just run rampant over all of this. So again, just for the purposes of this video, 3 infantry. Sorry, no, oops, I almost completely messed up that video. Right, now this is where we want to absolutely reinforce this C-zone, C-zone 8. We really just want to absolutely have that defended so that, Germany doesn't do anything with the Luftwaffe. It might have been purchasing 1 or 2 fighters every round. You never know. It depends how aggressive Germany has been. But, they're not stupid. They see what's happening here, so they decided to get a bunch of attacking infantry, a little bit of fodder, retreat a couple of fighters from the Russia theater, just to kind of help with whatever might come next. They're not a completely stupid player, but they were trying to keep as much pressure as they can on Russia in hopes that they are able to take it in round 4. Right, so you are definitely going to want to complete a set of 4 transports. So if you still have the one over here, which you should, there's no reason you shouldn't have this transport and reinforcing infantry and tank, purchase 3 transports. Now keep in mind that we only have a capacity to purchase 5 more units because the United Kingdom has a cap of 8. We've already purchased 3 for India, so with your remaining IPCs you can only purchase 5 units. What I like to do personally is have this very nicely defended, but at the same time we also want to make sure that we have a total of 8 land units to ship over next turn. You'll notice that we are lacking 2, so let's get another infantry and another artillery. Beautiful. Now, again, we only have 3 spots left to purchase. We've got 29 IPCs. What I would probably recommend, since you do have a Spitfire that's just sitting here doing absolutely nothing, if you really want to get this nice and defended, I'd say go for an aircraft carrier, and sadly we do have to purchase another Spitfire because we lost one in the first turn. If you still have a second one, you can use your remaining IPCs to maybe try to get a destroyer, a cruiser, whatever you like. I'm going to purchase a second Spitfire, and sadly we're down to 5 IPCs. I cannot purchase anything else. What I could potentially do in this situation, if you're stuck in the same situation as me, maybe remove 1 infantry off of India, maybe get a tank or something like that instead. That's not a bad option. Now, in terms of actual combat itself, all we're really gonna do is, since we don't have the actual transports we purchase, we can just do another bombing run and call it a day there. Hopefully Germany doesn't shoot the bomber down. 1 IPC, not bad. Better than dead. Send the ship back. Now for the non-combat move, we're going to move, if you have 2 Spitfires, you're going to move them both into C-Zone 8. Since I only have 1, I'm just going to move the 1 in there in preparation for putting the aircraft carrier there. And we're going to bring this transport with its infantry and its tank over here. And we're going to place absolutely everything we purchased in terms of naval capacity, at least, in C-Zone 8 with the reinforcing infantry and artillery, and you can put whatever you purchase for India on India. Now, at the start of US Round 3, this is where the fun begins. All we really need to purchase is 4 infantry, 4 artillery. You can use the remaining IPCs for absolutely whatever you like. If you want to keep a little bit of pressure with bombing, you can go for another bomber if you have the IPCs. If you want to keep a pressure with a little bit, with like a fighter or something like that, you can do that. What I personally like to try to do is to beef up this cycle as much as I can, in case the Germany player is a little bit smarter than I was this game, and they have France a little bit more reinforced. They might have fighters on France creating a much stronger defense. Maybe they've got a much bigger assault here in Germany, getting ready to retaliate and counterattack, which is actually a blessing in disguise, because all it really means is that they're dedicating less IPCs to keeping the pressure on Russia, which is a good thing. So you're doing a good thing as the US. But again, what I like to try to do is to beef this up to eventually have over many turns, right? You're not going to see this by round 4 or 5, but over the next 3 to 4 turns, I want to see 6 transports transporting 12 troops every turn, because again, Eastern United States does have a capacity to purchase 12 land units on there. So I would, instead of a fighter or a bomber, get another transport. You don't need to purchase the actual units for it. You can if you want to, just to have, 5 infantry and an artillery. It's really up to you. We can do that if you want. And now for the actual invasion. Now again, France might look very, very different. This is kind of where common sense comes into play. If you've got 20 infantry and 10 fighters on France, maybe change the strategy up a little bit, but that only means they literally have nothing on the east and Russia's about to plow the crap out of Germany because all the IPCs have gone into France. So it might look something like this. It might look a little bit beefier. Even if you don't take France, it doesn't matter. Start weakening them, because remember, by next turn, the UK has 8 units that are going into France as well. And after Germany goes, from round 4 onwards, for every other turn after that, you're just going to have a total of 16 land units minimum. Remember, the US is beefing up now with a couple more transports, but you're going to have a minimum of 16 land units entering France every single turn after Germany's round, or after Germany goes. Except for this one. This one, the US is kind of the sacrificial lamb. But let's go ahead and invade. Fighters as well. We could probably use the bomber to just ensure that we wipe everything off the map. Cruiser can bombard, and that looks like pretty much everything that we can actually use in terms of the actual combat. And again, I'm ignoring all this. If Japan is doing some crazy shit, you do what you want to do with the defensive fleet you have. If they've already invaded Alaska, you might need to sacrifice the 12 IPCs and not get a transport and start beefing up your western defenses. Again, I'm just ignoring this. We're just looking at this Atlantic Normandy strategy. So here in this scenario, Germany did not have it very defended. They only have 2 AA guns and 4 infantry. Sadly, the AA gun shoots down one of our fighters, the absolute bastard. But we managed to take it with relative ease and incur very few infantry losses. That fighter's gonna hurt me. Now remember, fighter, always on C-Zone 8. You want this defended. You want C-Zone 8 defended. That's the whole point of the rest of the fleet. You're not just going to be doing transport stuff. You actually want a little bit of a fleet here for actual defense, so that, Germany doesn't stack 3 fighters next turn and take it all out in one fell swoop, completely ruining your strategy. You want defense on C-Zone 8. Now remember, a very important part of this non-combat move is to actually move the rest of your fleet and the rest of everything that you had building up onto Eastern Canada and the coast off Eastern Canada as well, to start cycling. And mobilize everything we purchased on the Eastern United States. And end your turn. Alright, the start of UK round 4. Now, Germany did counterattack and managed to take France back, losing a couple of infantry, really, but, it looks like they've got a pretty solid force on there now. 1 infantry, 4 artillery, and 4 tanks, which is actually fantastic. It's sad that the US lost France, but the whole point of this strategy is not only to take France and then eventually take Germany, but start Germany focusing on their western front as well, leaving this monumentally exposed. What you're doing is giving Russia a chance, and Russia now with 8 infantry, 11 artillery, a tank, and 2 fighters on Russia mainland itself is looking pretty damn strong. It looks like they're definitely going to take Caucasus if they aim for it. They're definitely going to take West Russia if they aim for that. I don't know about taking both. It's possible, but, Russia's probably just going to focus on Caucasus, get Germany to lose that factory right there. And then the absolute rest of all this is looking very empty, because now, all of a sudden, Germany is trying to defend from this massive invasion fleet. And that's a good thing. That's what you want. You don't want to let Germany take Russia. Now, of course, the board might look a little bit different here, because you never really know how much Japan is going to be expanding into Russia and taking all of China. I have been ignoring this for the most part, so, it might look very different. But what your aim is here is to take the pressure off of Russia from their west. So again, as the UK, this is where you want to start actually putting a whole bunch of IPCs into England itself, not necessarily India. India is just going to kind of get the refuse, so here we're going to purchase 4 infantry, 4 artillery, and sadly India's left with 5 IPCs. Sucks to be them, we'll just plonk an infantry there. And the combat move here. Now, you could take all of this and attack France and weaken them for the US. You could go for Northwestern Europe if you want. You know, it's only 1 infantry there. You're going to have a massive stack of infantry here, and they're going to have to decide what to do with that. But sadly, that would mean that France isn't necessarily very weakened, and you're giving them a chance to keep it or retain it from the US assault and eventually place their 4 fighters there, making it very, very, very hard to take. So I would actually suggest that you attack it full force, use your fighters, use your bomber. They don't have AA guns there anymore because the US took it out, so I would just, even if you don't take it, just go full force and try to take France again. Weaken them as much as you potentially can to have the US come reinforce and take it with this massive stack of infantry. You might see France's ownership turn from Allied to Axis on and off for very many turns, but the whole idea is that Germany keeps pumping IPCs into taking France and kind of releases the pressure from Russia. So let's go ahead and assault it. Who knows, maybe we take it with the additional fighter and bomber. You never actually know. That was one hell of a combat round. Alright, looks like England is actually going to take France. Yeah, never underestimate air power. So England takes France, the defenders lose 43 IPCs. Remember, Spitfires, back to the sea. Sea Zone 8, don't leave this place under-defended. Bomber back to England, and end your turn. After you did whatever you wanted to do over here in India, Africa, and the Pacific. So there we go, a fresh batch of recruits on the United Kingdom for next turn. And here at the start of the US turn, now you'll see that, you know, they don't necessarily have to take France. They could aim for Northwestern Europe, but really the goal is to hold France. You want someone holding those 6 IPCs. You want Germany to not be able to take those 6 IPCs. 6 IPCs is a lot. It's not monumental, but it's a lot. That's a lot of IPCs. And if England gets to hold those, that's actually really nice because they keep to... You know, they get to keep putting additional stuff into actual India. But here, all we want to do is purchase the bare minimum of 4 infantry, 4 artillery, and whatever you have remaining you just kind of want to play with. I'm going to keep beefing up my transport capacity. So I'm going to get another transport, and why not another infantry and another artillery to complete next turn's cycle of 5 transports. Now the combat move, what you could actually do, let's see, they've got 6 infantry, 3 artillery, and 4 fighters. So I would probably send 1 transport to take Northwestern Europe, but that's risky. I don't know if I just want to ship 6 land units into France. Because if I only put 6 there, then we'll have a total of 9 land units in France with what the UK has. And I'm definitely not going to risk putting the fighter in France for additional defense, but it's definitely going to make Germany hurt in terms of what they try to take France with. So yeah, I'm going to ignore Northwestern Europe, and we're just going to land everything in France, which means no combat round except for potentially bombing Germany. Oh, sadly it knocked to the bottom. See, this is why I hate strategic bombing. I absolutely hate it. That 1 in 6 chance is just, it's absolutely brutal when you could be using a 4 attack bomber on actual land taking. That's rough. I hate strategic bombing so much. Anyway, non-combat phase, very important. Transport units from Eastern Canada onto France. Also of equal importance, take the remaining empty transports you have on Sea Zone 8, bring them back to 10. And move everything that you had from the Eastern United States up to Eastern Canada and Sea Zone 10 as well. And this is the entire gist of the strategy. It's just having enough transports to keep shipping enough troops, hopefully 6 transports shipping 12 troops every turn. If you can get to that, you know, by round 5, 6, 7, that's phenomenal. That means you're going to have 8 units from the United Kingdom every turn and 12 from Eastern Canada. That's 20 units every single turn into France or Northwestern Europe. Germany cannot contest that. They just cannot. They can't even do it in terms of placement capacity. You know, Germany's never going to have the IPCs to plunk 13 fighters down for the most unbelievably ridiculous defense ever, or 13 tanks. I mean, you just don't have that IPC capacity. So, you know, they're basically relegated to plunking down a bunch of infantry and artillery, and 13 versus 20, it just doesn't add up. And again, place whatever you purchased on the eastern United States and see Zone 11. Alright, start of UK round 5. Germany actually did manage to knock all the stuff out of there. They threw absolutely everything they had at it. But sadly, not looking very good against Russia. Russia took everything they had on Russia, took the Caucasus, only losing 9 infantry. They didn't even bother against West Russia because, let's face it, 2 infantry and 1 artillery, not much of a threat. They can just start taking it in these coming turns. But they took out the massive stack of 8 or 9 tanks that Germany had on here. They regained their factory, and there is nothing in the way from here for them to just blitz west, as Germany is dedicating 100%, pretty much, well, 90-something percent of its IPCs to taking on the Allied invasion fleet, or at least not necessarily the fleet, but retaking France every turn that it can to not allow the Allies to just have a massive standing army right here on their front door. So again, you just keep following this over and over and over. You know, do what you can anywhere else. I don't know how Japan would be looking in terms of threatening the US here, or how Japan would be looking to threatening India here, or how Africa would look. I have absolutely no idea. You know, that's a completely different... I'm not going to do an entire game strategy. This is just one strategy regarding the invasion of Normandy. Play it if you want to. If you don't like it, don't do it. It's just a video showcasing one potential strategy that a combined Allied invasion of France could offer you. So again, we're just going to purchase 4 infantry, 4 artillery, and whatever we can muster on India. There we go. And we just rinse and repeat. They're gonna keep, as long as they don't hold France for a turn, they can't place that massive stack of Luftwaffe on here, making it incredibly hard to take. So they just have to keep hitting it with all the infantry they keep purchasing, and the fighters have to keep retreating defensively. So just keep hitting France over and over and over, ensuring that they focus all of their attention on here, and they alleviate their eastern front. So again, we're gonna end up taking France, losing a total of 1 infantry. Very nice. Very, very nice. 1 infantry gone. Fighters to see Zone 8. Bomber back to England. And keep placing your 8 land units on the United Kingdom. And just keep rinsing and repeating for the US. Bare minimum of, well, now we've got a total of 5 transports, except that one's going to be moving up as well. Well, let's say 5, and an additional transport and an additional artillery. Why not? Just stack up. Again, if the remaining IPCs, just bare minimum, are 4 or 8 land units, 4 infantry, 4 artillery per turn, whatever you have remaining, you can use. If you're being threatened by Japan, if you know, anything else is going on, just use the remaining IPCs to do whatever you want. But if it's looking more like this, where Japan is trying to focus on India, and you still have your defensive fleet up here in Alaska or off the western coast of the United States, just keep maximizing everything you can do to eventually have 6 transports transporting 12 land units back and forth from Canada to France. Sadly, we did lose our bomber last turn, so we cannot bomb Germany. But we can go ahead and move absolutely everything into France again. and keep rinsing and repeating over and over and over. Next turn, we're going to have 10 land units. The turn after that, we're going to have 11 land units, etc., etc., all the way up to eventually having 12 land units. Keep in mind, you're going to need a total of 12 transports for that. We have 11 right now in the Atlantic, so we only need to purchase one more transport next turn before we eventually start having 12 land units over and over. And you'll notice that now we've got 16 land units on France, making it every turn, making it harder and harder and harder for Germany to take it back. So they're just going to have to keep dedicating more and more and more IPCs over here to taking France, completely alleviating this, which is a beautiful little strategy to try to help Russia out. I'm not going to keep going through the turns, but you get the general idea. You might even be a lot stronger here. You never know what this fleet could have done. You never know what India could have done. You might see a completely different set of the board. But this is basically the strategy. Just keep shipping troops over and over and over and over and over from the United States and the UK into either France or Northwestern Europe, whichever you seem is like the more logical option. But just maintain a strong defensive fleet on Sea Zone 8 and maintain troop transport into France. Once again, I'm not going to continue the video. It's pretty much, this could go on for another 2 or 3 turns before Germany finally falls, but you get the general idea. If your Germany player is more wise to the strategy or not, you'll see France being a little bit stronger, but again, that only alleviates their attack on Russia, so anything can happen in any single game. But once again, I want to thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and keep an eye out for future videos on Axis and Allies 1942 Online strategy.